Creator, we are here. Creator, please hear our prayer. Creator, we thank you for allowing us to come together at this conference. Creator, please recognize that the people are here. They come here with their hearts. They want to do good. They want to take care of the plants. They want to take care of Mother Earth, and that's why they're here, to learn to do that. Creator, please allow us to learn from each other. Allow us to listen with our hearts, with our minds, with our bodies, and with our spirit, so that we can understand what is taught and take it home and use it to make life better for the people. Creator, may we always remember that we need to take care of these plants, that we need to take care of Mother Earth with love, with patience, but most important, with spirituality. Let us remember to, when we're working on the farms, to say prayers, to sing songs, to talk to the plants, to give thanks. And may we always remember that when we take, we must make offerings. Let us make offerings that are acceptable to you, Creator.
Wow. Wow. That is a tough act to follow. Wow, Gene, thank you so much. And Valentin, thank you so much for that prayer. I tell you, that was mind-boggling. Where do you start with that? I think we should just go home right now. I tell you, folks, doing public speaking is really tough. I come to realize, see, when you're the first speaker, you set the tone for the whole evening or for the event. So you don't want to be the first speaker. I've learned you don't want to be the speaker before lunch. Everybody's thinking about lunch. You don't want to be the speaker after lunch because everybody's in a protein coma and starch coma. You don't want to be the last speaker either. Everybody wants to go home. You know what I've learned? Don't be a speaker. It's too late for that. Folks, I'm going to talk to you about a journey that I have taken 30 years it took me to be here today. In the last 12 years, I realized I was failing as a conservationist. Working with USDA NRCS, I came to an epiphany. It was 12 years ago. Reading Alan Savory's book at the right time, coming to Gabe Brown's ranch, but also events where I saw that farmers were going broke and they could not bring their sons and daughters to the operation. I said, something's wrong. Something's wrong with modern agriculture, and I could not put my finger on it. It was 12, 13 years ago, and we share this journey that we call we call it the soil health movement. How many of you have heard of the word soil health? Raise your hand. Oh, beautiful. If you would have Googled 12 years ago the word soil health, you would have seen maybe a couple of thousand hits. Now there are hundreds of millions of hits globally. And this movement started because of one word, failure. I'm here to tell you that I gave years and years and years of bad advice because that's what I understood. That's what I was taught in my university teaching. I was taught reductionist science. Now there is a huge movement where we're going to see that understand the word ecology, relationship, connectedness. We came up with these 8 principles. The 5 you see here on the left is towards the ecology. To the right is the ecology. The other one, I came up on my own. I came on my own because after years and years and years of study, I knew that the government would not embrace those ones on the left. They embraced the 5 here. Sometimes they called it 4, NRCS. They've embraced it, and they're teaching it all over the country. I'm excited about that. But tonight, I'm going to talk to you about one of those principles only. Something that is much more sublime than no-till, organic, or any other system that we've ever thought about. It is the foundation of a nation. It's called, the principle I have said there, you cannot build ecological integrity without human integrity. What I see after traveling thousands and thousands of miles and been on thousands of farms, I have seen that the land reflects the people. Let me build my point. See if I get this thing to work. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a new type of farming coming. It's integrity. The things that people pay for, that are willing to spend the extra money. People that have integrity. And a good group of you have that. Let's explain what integrity, what I mean by that. So I looked at the dictionary, meaning the adherence to moral principles, the quality of being an unimpaired, sound thought process, wholeness of thought. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I met a rancher and he first went to no-till and low disturbance farming in Idaho, the neighbors insatiably said, "You are destroying the planet. You are hurting the planet." And that man stood and he took it. As many of you, as you first took it when you became organic, do you guys remember when you first switched to organic? Did the neighborhood just love you? They didn't, did they? There's a social order, a cultural order, the things that are unsaid that is sinking our ship. It's the iceberg that most of us do not want to acknowledge, the social pressures that go on agriculture. So I had to go through history, and I said, look, I've been doing this for many, many years. What has happened in the past? Can we learn things from history? So I read this book, 1491, scanned through it. Then I saw this saying by Stephen Hawkins, and I said, it's great. It says, we spend a great deal of time studying history, which, let's face it, it's mostly the history of stupidity. And I said, this is what he's getting at. Ladies and gentlemen, in the past, I didn't realize that we had civilizations that were absolutely brilliant. See, we think because we have an iPhone, we can send men to the moon, we have satellites, that we didn't have smart human beings in the past. Case in point, to this day, this is a set of pillars in the part of Lebanon that we have no known modern equipment that can lift those pillars today. And they could. It's amazing. But let me tell you what's happened to their environment. Very much, that's what's happening to ours. Who'd have thought that that part of the world was once vegetated? I sat there and I was perplexed. I said, here I am, 56 years old, and I said, wow, I must have come to a really bad rated B movie. Because right in the middle of where I'm living in New Mexico, because I grew up in New Mexico, born in 1961, I see a picture by Alan Savory, and it shows my beautiful state was a short street prairie. I grew up seeing it as a desert. Ladies and gentlemen, they recently discovered in this petroglyph pictures of camels, ostriches, gazelles, horses, lions, and trees. I'm blown away. I cannot believe. Is this how far we have come? Ladies and gentlemen, as I travel the country, I am seeing that occurring in our country. And it hurts to see it. Let's go to other parts of the world. Look at the massive erosion. Do you know that in Iowa we're still losing 50 tons of erosion in certain parts of Iowa, in our beloved country? And we have spent trillions of dollars. I have worked 30 years. We started Soil Conservation Service, and now it's called NRCS, and we're still having massive erosion in our country. This is other parts of the world. They also, too, are having the same issues. The number one water quality problem in this country is not chemicals. It's still sediment, according to the U.S. EPA. Sediment. This slide is probably one of my favorite slides, and it agitates a lot of my own coworkers. Because as I flew to New Jersey, I said, I'm going to New Jersey and go do a soil health course. And I said, does New Jersey have soil? Because all the people, and I thought, it's called the Garden State. And as I flew and I took a picture with my iPhone on the airplane, I said, wow, this is our country. And then my favorite saying on one of my slides says, our lakes and rivers are filled with nutrient and conservation plans, but are not crystal clear with understanding. Why would our agency get so upset? Because we are touted ourselves as being a planning agency. See, I quickly realized it's not about planning. It's not about no-till. It's not about cover crops. It's about understanding. One day there was a great workshop, and we had all kinds of billionaires, millionaires come. And I'll never forget at the end of the meeting, the researcher stood up and said, our goal is to get 20 million acres covered by 20-some. And I smacked him. I said, no. The goal is to convert 20 million minds, and then we will change the world. We'll change the world. That's what this is about, changing minds and hearts. Folks, let me show you one of the tools that we use to teach about dysfunctional soils. To me, it's one of the most powerful tools. You give me a pickup truck, and you give me this demonstration tool, and let me free. And we will take it place to place to place. This little demonstration I'm going to show you that we use religiously has converted many people. One producer went to no-till and covers by watching this one demonstration. Let's watch it.
To fully appreciate the potential runoff erosion from a conventionally tilled field like this, you really need to be out here during the most intense thunderstorm of the year. Since most people aren't willing to do that, here in Virginia we use a rainfall simulator to help our farmers tell the story of what happens when it rains really hard.
How many have seen the rain simulator? Raise your hand.
On the left, we start with a tray of dry, loose soil taken from a clean till field. On the right, we start with a slice of intact surface soil from a long-term no-till field. This soil is not only protected with a mulch of cover crop residue, it also has a stable, porous sponge structure.
You know, years ago, as a kid, I remember, you know, you'd get these big, heavy thunderstorms in the summer, and it would just wash the field, and you'd end up with mud down on the road. And I'm talking about mud that you'd go over there with a skid loader and scoop out of the way so the cars could go down the road. What I'm seeing now is I'm seeing these heavy rainfalls, and I'm barely seeing a trickle coming out of the field.
After we simulate an extremely intense thunderstorm for 5 minutes, the differences are obvious. Most of the water we applied to this soil has run off into this jar, carrying away with it a thin but very significant layer of topsoil. We just applied 1.5 inches of very intense rainfall to this bare, tilled soil. Obviously, we harvested very little for future plant use. Meanwhile, this no-till soil has absorbed virtually every drop of water we applied. What little ran off is clear. The bottom line is pretty simple. If you want to harvest more rain like these no-till farmers are doing, keep your soil covered on top and make it a sponge underneath.
Ladies and gentlemen, a majority of our country, our planet, was destroyed by one of the most intrusive tools, tillage. We knew since 1938 tillage destroyed aggregates. We have known that for years. It's one of the most intrusive tools. And overgrazing and deforestation. Ladies and gentlemen, those were all under organic systems. See, it's never been about organic. It's about a people that understand the whole system, learning how to mimic nature. We know now, and we've known for years, that tillage is destructive. And we now are moving a lot of our organic and a lot of our people in that direction. Let me show you another. How many have seen this video by Jeff Lawton, one of my favorite permaculturists? He's brilliant.
This is organic carrots on an industrial scale, 40 tons to the acre. But these carrots are grown on aquifer water. This water is pumped from underground, and that aquifer is dropping dramatically, and over the years it's sold in dramatically. Now, to irrigate these carrots, which have to be irrigated every day, you've got to pump continuously from an aquifer to a reservoir. That reservoir then has to have water pumped all the time to these carrots. This landscape was at one time a thriving landscape with a functioning ecosystem in the hills and a river that ran with steelhead salmon as a main food of the local people. This was a flourishing treed landscape with 10,000 Chumash Indians living in this upper Cuyama Valley. Now it's an organic agricultural area, but the organics have exploited the soil, have exploited the aquifer, and now it's salted. And the labour here is mostly immigrant labour on very, very poor wage rates. So exploitation of people, exploitation of soils, exploitation of the wildlife, exploitation of the aquifer, and now it's salting up as a final killing mechanism. This landscape could be salted up for 1,000 years, and we think that's a good organic product. Just because it's organic doesn't mean that it's sustainable, doesn't mean that it's healthy, doesn't mean that it's good for the environment, and in the long term, obviously, it's not good for people.
And this is the father of permaculture. Wrapping it up, the last couple of slides, ladies and gentlemen. But there's something beautiful happening. We are teaching all over the country, ladies and gentlemen, how to emulate the prairie and forest. We have thousands of acres, millions of acres increasing in cover crops, that we are emulating the prairie and forest. We are doing this, ladies and gentlemen. We are planting multi-species mixes that emulate the structure of the forests and the prairie. Last year, Indiana increased their cover crops by 5% in the whole state of Indiana through the soil health movement. That is exciting. We are mimicking that system. Last slide. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. What you see on the right-hand side is the new movement of agriculture, where hundreds of thousands of acres. This is a no-till producer who is rolling cover crops and planting corn and soybean. We're doing it on tomatoes. We're doing it on squash. We're doing it on large-scale agriculture. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen. And they use a herbicide. And we are slowly getting away from those. Ladies and gentlemen, our producers now have cut, some of them have reduced completely nitrogen fertilizer in their operation, have completely eliminated fungicides and insecticides. They are now heading into a journey of regenerative ag. Look at Gabe Brown. This is his field, and this is conventional industrial ag. This is Gabe mimicking the buffalo. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to you, I want to thank you guys in organic. If I get an option to go speak in organic versus no-till, I will take on organic all the time. Do you know why? Because the first two people that got up here It is about their why. It is about your why. And if it wasn't for people like you that really pushed the envelope and said something is wrong in the system, you wouldn't have brought consciousness to agriculture, and I want to thank you for that. But please understand something. Bring your other brothers and sisters. They're following along, and it's happening on a large scale, and we should be proud of them. So the most important thing we can do is approach people like Mr. Lopez said, in love. We will change this planet, and I want to thank you for inviting me and allowing me part of that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Ray. We not only love the enthusiasm, we know the passion and the heart is there. And we know that's where most of us are here, why we're here tonight, is to learn, to share, and to extend that heart and hand to others. A gentleman who has done that for years out of North Dakota has been a farmer who has learned through his mistakes, he often says, through also environmental challenges that pushed him to learn if he was going to stay farming. And it's curious how those sort of schools of hard knocks are the things that can make us change, because it's very hard to change something we're comfortable doing. But we have to have a very inquisitive mind, a thoughtful mind, and one that's willing to challenge the paradigms that he was raised with, he understood. And this is one of the most innovative farmers who has shown us that we can sequester 25 tons of carbon per hectare per year, an off-the-charts level of hope for us all. With that, join me in welcoming Gabe Brown.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. Yes, Tim was right. It is a little nicer weather here in California than back home. We've been as low as 55 below zero this year, so California is a bit too warm for me. Notice I'm walking around in short sleeves. I really wanted in the keynote tonight to just continue on what was the groundwork by the previous presenters, and especially talk a bit about some of the challenges that we're faced with in agriculture today. Today in production agriculture, I don't care, you can't pick up a magazine, listen to the radio, the TV without hearing this. How are we going to feed this ever-growing population? That's all they talk about, is produce more and more and more. This puts us solely on the focus of yield and pounds. And let's look at what's that's done. The current production model is one of just monocultures. And like Ray, I have the good fortune of being on thousands of operations all over the world every year. And I can tell you it's the same no matter where I go. Monoculture corn, monoculture soybeans, even our fruit, our nut production, monocultures, often with tillage. Vegetable production, the same thing, monocultures, even inside, even the hydroponics, monocultures. Livestock in confinement. You want to feel sick, just drive through Kansas, Nebraska, feedlot areas, drive through Iowa, look at the animals in confinement. Go on the East Coast, the poultry operations, all in confinement. Look at this overhead satellite view of a feedlot. That really makes you want to eat a steak, doesn't it? What effect does our current production model have on our resources? Take a look at that, and Ray outlined that. This is the same soil here. This farmer took a forested area, cleared part of it, and farmed it monoculture soybeans for 17 years. That's the same soil. I often tell people when I'm out presenting, I really wish I would have had the foresight to archive my soils when I started moving down this path, because they were just like the soils on the right there. As we'll learn from Dr. Johnson, those soils have very little life to them. Which of these soils is going to cycle more carbon? Which has more carbon? Which is going to infiltrate water? Ray showed the video of that. Yet that's where we're driving production agriculture with our practices. Take a look at this. What have we learned in 79 years? In the lower right, that's 1935. The upper left, that's 2014. Are we really advancing agriculture? Ray showed this picture, and I'm going to show it again because it bears worth repeating. Look at our soils going into that watershed. Today in the breakout session, I held up a piece of paper. The thickness of that sheet of paper is the equivalent of 1 ton of topsoil per acre lost. Yet no matter where we go, Ray and I were in Oklahoma in October putting on a soil health workshop. They closed the interstate that day because the amount of soil blowing was so great they were afraid of accidents on the highway. That's a travesty. We should not be seeing that in agriculture. Along with that erosion, we're taking the nutrients, whether it be synthetic or organic, down through the watershed, and it ends up where? In our drinking water. Look at the problems they're having in the Great Lakes, the Gulf of Mexico, and even here along the West Coast. That's a direct result of the management that we as producers are using on our landscapes. The current production model is always about killing, and I tell people, I farmed conventionally for 9 years. I woke up every morning trying to decide what I was going to kill that day. A pest, a weed, a fungus. What I really learned was that I was killing my profit and I was killing my family. Take a look at this. The nutrient density of the products we produce has decreased anywhere from 15 to 65% in the last 50 years. The mineral depletion in vegetables. Look at that. 27 different kinds of vegetables. Look at how much minerals have been lost. Copper, 76% less. No matter what nutrient you test for, it'll be less now than it was years ago. 10 kinds of meat. Look at that. Beef is often touted for having high iron. Iron's declined by 54%. An individual today would have to eat twice as much meat, 3 times as much fruit, 4 times as much vegetables as compared to those same vegetables in 1940. Are we really producing food? Or are we just producing blank calories? The result of this is the United States spends more on health care than any other country in the world. Yet look where we are. We rank at the top or near the top in ADD, ADHD, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmune diseases, osteoporosis, and the list goes on and on. Don't tell me that we're producing nutrient-dense foods. We're not. Masanobu said it best. Food and medicine are not 2 different things. They are the front and the back of one body. Chemically grown vegetables may be eaten for food, but they cannot be used for medicine. We're seeing a real change in this country. We cannot go down the same path. In order to produce nutrient-dense foods, we have to learn to focus on the resource. That's our challenge that's ahead of us. It's to not only produce food that is free of chemicals, but to do it in a way that ensures it's high in nutrient density while regenerating our resources, not depleting them. I believe that the ecological and human crises we're seeing today are a crisis of character. I really respect Ray for coming up with this saying. One cannot have ecological integrity without human integrity. And it's up to each and every one of us as consumers, as producers, to make sure that we have the integrity to move our land in the right direction. In order to do that, we must change our production model. We must work with nature instead of against her. Look how nature functions. In nature, there is no mechanical or chemical disturbance. In nature, there's always a cover or armor on the soil surface. Nature cycles water very, very efficiently if we allow her to. In nature, there's living plant root networks with mycorrhizal fungi transferring nutrients that were supplied via biology. The last and most important thing, nature has eons of time in research and development. Yet, do we pay attention to her in production agriculture? Very few of us do. We have to start thinking of our operations as a healthy, functioning ecosystem. Ray and I have the good fortune on consulting on hundreds of operations all over. Very, very few people think of their operations as a complete ecosystem. They're farming monocultures and they separate things. We have to get away from that. Next, we have to be proud of what we're doing, and we have to allow the whole world to see it. I'm proud of the fact that our ranch has an open door policy. Anybody can drive on it at any time and look at anything they want. I'm going to show you, the last 2 days I've been asked, how fast can we regenerate topsoils? Here's a series of slides that show you how fast. This is stockpiled forage from 1 year's growth on one of my paddocks. We then use that stockpiled forage in early April. We're grazing dry cows on it. We just wean the calves. We leave the calves on the cows all winter out grazing. Here they're harvesting that stockpiled forage, but more importantly, they're trampling it down onto the soil surface, a large part of it, to be consumed by biology, to protect the soil, and to feed microorganisms. I had the good fortune, 3 years after we did this, Dr. Christine Jones, who many of you know, she's one of the world's foremost soil ecologists, came to see the work we were doing on our operation. She stuck a spade in the ground, and this is what she found. See what I got outlined in green and yellow? That is this trampled forage 3 years later. Look what's on top of it. Some might argue that's not soil. I don't care. You can argue with me, but I call it a good thing. We're growing our acreage up. That can be done in 3 years. People often say, Gabe, I'm a young producer. I want to move into the regenerative ag. How long is it going to take me? This is Michael Thompson, a young man in Kansas who bought into the system whole hog, was in a tilled operation, went to regenerative with covers and livestock. That's the same soil 3 years later. Isn't that amazing? Don't tell me we can't regenerate our soils. We can do it very, very fast. This is what we've done on our ranch since we started. In 1993, I started going no-till. The organic matter levels on our cropland were 1.7%. Infiltration rates were 1/2 inch per hour. 1995, we really started to diversify the cash crops. A little bump up in organic matter levels. Then from the years 97 through 2005, we focused on cover crop integration. We were growing cash crops and cover crops in North Dakota. We get 10 to 11 inches of rainfall a year. We get another 4 to 5 inches from the 70 plus inches of snow. So about 15 to 16 inches of precipitation a year. Yet on all 2,000 of our cropland acres, I'm growing a cash crop and a cover crop every year. We can do it. We saw a big jump in our organic matter levels once we started doing that. In 2006 through 2008, I did a series of events. I was introduced to the right individuals who challenged me to remove my synthetic fertilizers. 2007 was the last year we used fertilizers, synthetic or organic, on our own operation. We also really started integrating the multi-species cover crops. 10, 12, 15-way mixes. Huge jump up in the health of our soil. Then in 2010, we started integrating the livestock, multi-species livestock. We run cow-calf pairs, grass-finished beef. We have a flock of sheep. We grass-finish the lambs. We have hogs. We run those on covers. And we have 1,100 laying hens. We do broilers. We got a bee operation. All these different enterprises are stacked throughout all 5,000 acres of our operation. Big jump in organic matter levels and in the health of our soils. Now what we're doing here the last few years is we're really focused on having a high amount of diversity of cash crops, cover crops, animals, insects, and microbes, really focused on marketing, direct marketing, nutrient-dense foods to customers. That's what our soils look like now. We just went through some intense soil testing. We're up to 7.9% organic matter on some of our cropland soils. This is large-scale production agriculture. I'm really excited to be a part of a project with Landstream. Aim Collins and Dr. John Norman started this. This past fall, we took 118 soil samples on 620 acres of land. We're doing sensing on all that land. Those soil cores, 4-foot probes on all 118 samples. We now are able to measure over 60 different nutrients, plus cation exchange capacity, and many, many other factors anywhere on our operation. The next step for Landstream is we're going to do remote satellite sensing, where we will in real time be able to tell how much carbon we're taking out of the atmosphere, cycling into our soil. We're going to be able to tell how much photosynthesis is taking place. And then, one of the real exciting things to me, we're going to be able to quantify ecosystem functions and ecosystem services. That will allow us to help producers in real time. They'll be able to tell how much forage they're going to produce on their operation and how much they have as of that day. That'll give anyone the opportunity to be prepared for these swings in temperature, in moisture, etc. This is exciting, and it's coming. The regenerative model allows us to produce many more calories of nutrient-dense food per acre as compared to the current production model. We can feed the whole world while healing our ecosystems, and most importantly, we're going to restore hope for future generations. Thank you.